The sea was a restless beast. That July evening in 2007, its waves clawing at the hull of the Serendipity, a 42-foot yacht bobbing off the coast of Maine. The Harper family, Mark, Ellen, their 16-year-old son Ethan, and 12-year-old daughter Lily, had set out for what was meant to be a week of bonding, a fleeting escape from the grind of their suburban Connecticut lives. Mark, a high school history teacher with a penchant for nautical charts, had planned the trip meticulously, plotting a course through the Gulf of Maine to explore its rugged islands. Ellen, a pediatric nurse, had been skeptical about the open water, but agreed for the sake of family unity. Lily, all braces and boundless energy, was thrilled to be on what she called an adventure straight out of a pirate movie. Ethan, though, was quieter, his sharp green eyes often fixed on the horizon, as if searching for something beyond the endless blue. The first 2 days had been idyllic. They'd anchored near a rocky islet, fished for mackerel, and laughed over Ellen's attempt to cook their catch without setting the galley on fire. Ethan, usually reserved, had seemed lighter, sketching in a leather-bound journal he'd brought along, its pages filled with pencil drawings of waves, gulls, and cryptic little phrases he never shared. "He's just being a teenager," Mark had said when Ellen worried about his silence. But that evening, as the sun bled crimson into the sea and the wind began to howl, something shifted. They were anchored off a desolate speck called Ironbound Island, a place not marked on most tourist maps, its cliffs jagged and uninviting. The weather had turned sour, the barometer dropping faster than Mark liked. He'd suggested they ride out the storm in the cove, the yacht's anchor chain taut against the current. Ethan had been on deck, bundled in a yellow raincoat, staring into the gathering dark. Lily was below, reading a dog-eared copy of Treasure Island. Ellen was double-checking the radio when she heard Mark shout, "Ethan, get below, it's getting rough." No one saw him go. One moment he was there, a silhouette against the storm's gray veil. The next he was gone. The deck was empty, the raincoat's hood flapping uselessly in the wind. Mark scrambled to the rail, screaming Ethan's name into the gale, his voice swallowed by the roar of waves. Ellen tore through the cabin, checking every corner as if her son could somehow be hiding in the cramped space. Lily sobbed, clutching her book, asking over and over, "Where's Ethan?" They searched until dawn, Mark steering the yacht in desperate circles, Ellen shining a flashlight into the black water, calling until her throat was raw. The Coast Guard arrived by mid-morning, their cutter slicing through the chop, but the sea gave nothing back. No body, no trace, not even the raincoat. The official report called it a tragic accident. Presumed, swept overboard, the investigators concluded, citing the storm's ferocity and Ethan's inexperience on deck. The Harpers returned to shore hollowed out, their grief a weight that bent their shoulders and dulled their eyes. Mark blamed himself, replaying every decision, the choice to anchor, the failure to check Ethan's life vest. Ellen stopped sleeping, haunted by the image of her son slipping into the abyss. Lily withdrew, her pirate fantasies replaced by nightmares of a sea that stole her brother. The family unraveled, their home a museum of Ethan's absence, his room untouched, his journal missing, presumed lost with him. 14 years passed, each one carving deeper lines into the Harpers' lives. Mark took early retirement, his passion for teaching drowned in guilt. Ellen worked longer shifts, avoiding the house where memories lurked. Lily, now 26, had moved to Boston, a graphic designer with a guarded smile and a habit of avoiding the coast. They spoke rarely, their conversations brittle, skirting the wound that never healed. The Serendipity was sold, its name a bitter irony. Ironbound Island became a forbidden topic, a place they'd never return to, its name synonymous with loss. Then in August 2021, a package arrived at the Harpers' old address, forwarded to Ellen's new apartment. It was a padded envelope, salt-stained and battered, postmarked from a tiny post office in Newfoundland. Inside was Ethan's journal, its leather cover warped but intact, the pages brittle with dried seawater. A note was tucked inside, scrawled by a fisherman named Amos Crane. "Found this washed up on a beach near Twillingate. thought it might mean something to someone. The journal's first page bore Ethan's name in his angular handwriting, unmistakable even after all these years. Ellen's hands shook as she held it, her breath catching at the sight of his sketches, his words. Mark, summoned by a frantic call, stared at the journal as if it were a ghost. Lily drove through the night from Boston, arriving pale and wide. The journal was a relic from a life they'd lost, but it was also a mystery. How had it survived? Why had it surfaced now on a remote Canadian beach, over 600 miles from where Ethan vanished? The pages were a mix of drawings, waves, cliffs, strange symbols and fragmented entries, some illegible from water damage, but what they could read was enough to shatter the narrative of a boy swept away. Ethan's last entry, dated the night he disappeared, read, "I saw something out there. Not a ship, not a whale. It's calling me. I have to go." Below it was a sketch of a shape in the water, angular and unnatural, like no vessel or creature they'd ever seen. The Harpers were pulled back to Ironbound Island, drawn by questions the journal raised. They hadn't set foot on a boat together since 2007, but the need to understand overwhelmed their fear. Mark chartered a small research vessel, the Aurora, captained by a grizzled mariner named Clara Voss, who knew the Gulf's moods better than most. Clara, with her weathered face and sharp tongue, warned them about Ironbound's reputation among locals, whispers of strange lights, missing fishermen, and currents that didn't follow charts. "Folks call it cursed," she said, spitting over the "You sure you want to poke that hornet's nest?" They set sail on a clear morning, the sea deceptively calm. Lily clutched the journal, reading and rereading Ethan's words, searching for clues. Ellen kept her eyes on the horizon, as if expecting Ethan to appear. Mark pored over charts, his hands unsteady, muttering about coordinates and tidal patterns. The Aurora reached Ironbound by dusk, its cliffs looming like sentinels against a sky streaked with violet. They anchored in the same cove where the Serendipity had ridden out the storm, the air heavy with memory. The island was a desolate place, its rocky shore littered with kelp and driftwood, its interior a tangle of stunted pines and granite outcrops. They searched for 2 days, combing the beaches, climbing the cliffs, calling Ethan's name despite knowing it was futile. Clara stayed aboard, watching the weather with a wary eye. On the 3rd day, Lily found something, a piece of yellow fabric caught in a crevice, faded but unmistakable. It was a shred of Ethan's raincoat. Nearby, half buried in sand, was a small metal box, rusted but intact, its lid etched with the same strange symbol from Ethan's journal. Inside the box was a single sheet of paper, folded tightly, its edges brittle. The handwriting was Ethan's, but the words were frantic, unlike his usual careful script. "They're watching. They know I'm here. The light isn't a lighthouse. It's alive. If you find this, don't follow me." The Harpers stood frozen, the words sinking in. Who were they? What was the light? And why had Ethan written as if he'd been on the island, not swept away at sea? The discovery broke something open in them. Mark, usually stoic, wept silently, clutching the paper. Ellen's face hardened, her nurse's pragmatism giving way to a mother's desperation to know her son's fate. Lily, trembling, traced the symbol on the box, her artist's eye recognizing its precision, unlike anything natural. They agreed to stay one more night, driven by a need to uncover more, even as Clara warned of an approaching squall. "This place don't give up its secrets easy," she said, her voice low, "and it don't like visitors." That night, as the wind began to rise, Lily sat in the Aurora's cabin, the journal open before her. She'd been transcribing Ethan's entries, piecing together fragments. One caught her eye, dated 2 days before he vanished. "The water hums at night, like a voice, but not human. Dad thinks it's the current, but I know better. It's coming from the island." Another, "From the morning of the storm, I dreamed of a city under the sea, not ruins, alive, glowing. I told Mom, but she laughed it off. I'm not crazy, it's real." Lily's heart raced. Ethan hadn't been brooding or distant. He'd been seeing something, hearing something, that none of them had noticed. At midnight, the storm hit, a howling beast that rocked the Aurora and sent waves crashing over the deck. Mark and Ellen were below, arguing over whether to leave at first light. Lily, unable to sleep, went on deck, the journal tucked inside her jacket. The rain was relentless, the sky a void, but she saw it. A flicker of light from the island, not the steady pulse of a lighthouse, but erratic, almost deliberate, like a signal. It matched Ethan's sketch, the angular shape in the water. She shouted for Clara, who emerged cursing but froze when she saw the light. "That ain't no beacon," Clara muttered, grabbing binoculars. Before she could focus, the light vanished, leaving only the storm's roar. The next morning, the Harpers were resolute. They had to go back to the island. Clara protested, citing the weather, but their desperation won out. They rowed ashore in a dinghy, the sea still churning. On the beach, they found more traces: a broken oar with the Serendipity's name, a rusted knife Ethan had carried. Each discovery was a stab, proof he'd been here, alive, after the night they thought he'd drowned. But the biggest find came in a shallow cave, its entrance hidden by bracken. Inside, carved into the stone, was the symbol again, larger, its lines precise, almost machine. Below it, scratched into the rock were Ethan's initials, E.H. The cave was narrow, its air damp and heavy with salt. Mark lit a flashlight, revealing walls covered in more carving spirals, angles, shapes that defied geometry. At the cave's end was a pool, its surface unnaturally still, reflecting the beam like a mirror. Ellen knelt, touching the water, and gasped. It was warm, pulsing faintly, as if alive. Lily opened the journal, finding a sketch of the same pool, captioned, "The Gate, it's where they go." Her voice shook as she read it aloud. Mark, his face pale, said, "He didn't fall overboard. He came here, on purpose." The realization was a blade, cutting through 14 years of grief. Ethan hadn't been taken by the sea. He'd chosen to follow something that had called him to this island, to this cave. But what, and why hadn't he come back? The Harpers stood in silence, the pool's faint glow casting shadows on their faces. Clara, who'd followed them reluctantly, whispered, "We need to leave, now." But before they could move, the ground trembled, a low hum rising from the pool. The water rippled, and for a moment, they saw it, a shape beneath the surface, angular, immense, its edges glinting like polished stone. It was the thing from Ethan's sketch, and it was moving. Panic seized them. Mark grabbed Ellen's arm, pulling her toward the cave's mouth. Lily clutched the journal, stumbling after them. Clara was already at the dinghy, shouting for them to hurry. The hum grew louder, the air vibrating, as if the island itself were waking. They rowed back to the Aurora, the sea roiling beneath them, and Clara gunned the engine, steering for open water. No one spoke, their breaths ragged, the journal heavy in Lily's hand. They'd found answers, but each one birthed a dozen questions. What had Ethan seen? Who or what had he followed? And why had his journal surfaced now, after all these years? Back in Connecticut, the Harpers couldn't let go. The journal became their obsession, its pages a map to a truth they barely understood. Ethan's entries grew stranger, the deeper they read, references to the Watchers, a city that breathes, and a light that knows my name. He'd written of dreams that felt like memories, of voices in the water that spoke in a language he couldn't translate. One entry, near the end, chilled them. "If I go, I might not come back, but I have to know. I'm sorry, Mom, Dad, Lily, I love you." It was dated hours before he vanished, and it broke their hearts all over again. They contacted experts, marine biologists, archaeologists, even a paranormal researcher who'd written about unexplained phenomena in the Gulf of Maine. Most dismissed the journal as the ramblings of a troubled teen, but a few took interest. Dr. Nora Quinn, an oceanographer from Woods Hole, was intrigued by the symbol, which she'd seen in ancient maritime artifacts, though never identified. "It's not Norse, not Celtic," she said, studying Ethan's sketches. "It's older, maybe pre-human." Her words sent a shiver through Lily, who'd begun to dream of the island, of the pool, of Ethan standing at its edge, looking back at her. Mark, desperate for answers, hired a private investigator, Tom Ballard, a former Coast Guard officer, who'd worked missing persons cases. Ballard traced the journal's path from Newfoundland, interviewing Amos Crane, the fisherman. Amos,
A wiry man with eyes like chipped flint said he'd found the journal in a tide pool, wrapped in oilcloth, as if someone had meant to protect it. That beach ain't friendly, Amos told Ballard. Things wash up there, nets, bottles, bones, but that book, it felt like it wanted to be found. He mentioned lights in the water too, seen by other fishermen, always near Ironbound. Folks say it's ghosts, I say it's something else. Ballard's report added fuel to the Harper's quest. He found records of other disappearances, near Ironbound fishermen, sailors, even a small plane that vanished in 1983. Its wreckage never recovered. The island was a blind spot, avoided by locals, uncharted by modern survey. Satellite images showed anomalies, blurred patches where the island should be, as if the cameras couldn't focus. Ballard urged caution, but the Harpers were past that. They needed to go back. Their second trip to Ironbound was in October 20. The sea colder, the sky a bruised gray. Clara refused to captain again, so they hired a new boat, the Resolute, skippered by a taciturn man named Jonas Reed. Jonas, a former Navy diver, didn't blink at their story, only nodded and said, "I've seen weird shit out there, let's go." They brought equipment this time, diving gear, underwater cameras, a sonar rig to map the cove. Dr. Quinn joined them, her curiosity outweighing her skepticism. "If there's something down there," she said, "we'll find." The island felt different this time, hostile, as if it knew they'd returned. The cliffs seemed taller, the air thicker. They set up camp on the beach, near the cave, and spent days scanning the water. The sonar pinged erratically, showing shapes that appeared and vanished, too large to be fish, too fast to be wrecks. Quinn's cameras captured nothing but static, their lenses fogging inexplicably. At night the hum returned, louder, coming from the cave. Lily, unable to resist, crept inside alone, the journal in her hands. She stood by the pool, its glow stronger now, and whispered Ethan's name. The water answered, a low, resonant pulse that made her chest ache. She saw him, or thought she did, a flicker of his face in the reflection, his eyes wide with fear or wonder. She ran back to camp, waking the others. Mark and Ellen were frantic, angry she'd gone alone. Quinn, though, was electrified, rigging sensors around the pool. The readings were impossible. Electromagnetic spikes, temperature fluctuations, vibrations that matched no known geological activity. "This isn't natural," Quinn said, her voice tight. "It's engine." Jonas, who'd been diving the cove, surfaced with a find, a fragment of metal, etched with the same symbol, its surface unmarred by corrosion, despite years underwater. "This ain't from any ship I know," he said, handing it to Mark. The discovery pushed them to the edge. They argued. Mark wanted to dive deeper. Ellen wanted to leave. Lily wanted to stay by the pool, convinced Ethan was close. Quinn, torn between science and fear, kept recording, her instrument screaming with data. Jonas, practical but shaken, said, "Whatever's down there, it's not human, and it's awake." That night the light returned, brighter, pulsing in rhythm with the hum. It wasn't on the island but in the water, moving toward them. The Resolute's radar went haywire, showing a mass beneath the surface, too big, too fast. Jonas shouted to weigh anchor, but before they could, the light flared, blinding, and the sea erupted. When the chaos cleared, the Resolute was intact, but the camp was in disarray. Tents overturned, equipment scattered. Quinn's sensors were fried, their data lost. The metal fragment was gone, as if reclaimed. Lily, clutching the journal, found a new page, one she hadn't noticed before, its ink fresh. "Impossible. Lily, don't look for me. It's not safe. I'm sorry." The words were Ethan's. But how? When the Harpers stared at each other, their faces pale in the dawn light. They'd come for answers, but the island had given them only more questions, each one a hook in their hearts. They left Ironbound that morning, the sea calm but heavy with secret. Back home, the journal became their tether to Ethan, its pages a puzzle they couldn't solve. Lily began sketching the symbol obsessively, filling notebooks with its variation. Ellen, haunted by the pool's glow, started researching ancient maritime lore, finding references to gates in the sea, places where the world thinned. Mark, broken but driven, contacted Ballard again, asking him to dig deeper. The investigator's next report was chilling. A classified Navy file, leaked by a contact, mentioned a 1960s expedition to Ironbound that vanished. Its last transmission, describing lights that think. The file was marked terminated. The project buried. The Harpers knew they couldn't stop. Ethan was out there, or had been, and the island held the key. They planned a third trip, this time with a larger team. Divers, scientists, even a linguist, to decode Ethan's cryptic phrases. But the night before they were set to leave, Lily woke to a sound, a low hum, like the one from the cave, coming from her apartment. The journal, left open on her desk, was glowing faintly, its pages warm to the touch. She didn't scream, didn't call her parents. She opened it, her hands steady, and read the newest entry, written in Ethan's hand. I'm still here. Don't come back.
Lily's apartment was a suffocating prison. That November night in 2021, its walls pressing in like the jaws of a trap, she sat frozen at her desk, the journal glowing faintly, its leather cover, warped and salt-stained from years lost to the sea, pulsing with an unnatural warmth, as if it held a heartbeat of its own. Ethan's words, "I'm still here, don't come back," scrawled in his sharp, unmistakable handwriting, burned into her vision, each letter a shard of glass, slicing through her heart. The hum, that bone-deep, otherworldly resonance from the iron-bound cave, thrummed through the room, threading into her ribs, her skull, her soul. It wasn't just sound. It was a presence, a summons, a warning from a brother vanished 14 years ago. Her breath caught, torn between a desperate hope that Ethan was alive, and a creeping dread that something else, something ancient, something wrong was reaching through the pages. Her fingers, trembling, clung to the journal, its pages rustling faintly, as if stirred by an unseen hand, whispering secrets she wasn't ready to hear. She wanted to scream, to call her parents, but her body refused, pinned by the weight of his words. The hum, a voice in her mind. Lily, don't. Sleep was a distant memory. The hum lingered, relentless, a pulse that kept her awake as she packed a bag, wrapping the journal in a scarf and tucking it into her backpack, like a relic too sacred, too dangerous to touch. The drive to her parents' house in Connecticut was a blur of gray highways, skeletal trees, and the journal's weight pressing against her chest, a constant reminder of Ethan's impossible message. Her mind looped his last entry, his warning, his presence that defied time and death. The Harpers' home, once alive with Ethan's skateboard clatter, Lily's laughter, and the warmth of family dinners, was now a mausoleum of memory. Ethan's room stood frozen in time, his bed unmade, a faded band poster curling on the wall, sketches pinned to a corkboard, their edges brittle like old skin, his presence lingering in every untouched corner. Mark sat in the kitchen, staring at a cold coffee mug, his face carved with lines that aged him beyond his 52 years, his eyes hollow with a guilt that had never faded. Ellen paced the living room, her hands twisting a dish towel into knots, her eyes red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying for 14 years and only now run dry. When Lily opened the journal to the new page, the air thickened, the hum a faint echo only she seemed to hear. Mark touched the wet ink, his hands shaking, his voice a broken whisper. "He's out there, my boy, he's alive." Ellen's grip on Lily's arm was bruising, her eyes wild with a mix of fear and hope, her voice trembling. "We can't lose you too, Lily, please." But her gaze lingered on the journal, betraying her. She wanted to believe Ethan was alive as much as Lily did, even if it meant facing the unknown. They called Dr. Nora Quinn, the oceanographer who'd joined their second trip to Ironbound, and Tom Ballard, the private investigator who'd unearthed the island's dark history. Quinn arrived by noon, her scientific detachment fraying, her usual calm replaced by a restless energy. She studied the journal under a magnifying glass, her brow creased, her breath uneven. "This shouldn't exist," she said, her voice low, almost reverent. "The paper's 14 years old, water-damaged, brittle,
But this ink, it's fresh like it was written yesterday. It's impossible. She set up a portable spectrometer, its readings spiking erratically near the journal, needles dancing, screens flickering with static. There's energy here, low frequency, structured, like a signal, a communication from Ballard, joining via a grainy video call, was grimmer, his weathered face tight with unease, his eyes shadowed. He held up a scanned page from an 1850s whaler's log, its ink faded but legible, describing a city of light beneath the Gulf of Maine, its crew vanishing after nearing Ironbound. "This ain't the first time," he said, his voice heavy, rough with warning. "That island's been swallowing people for centuries, sailors, fishermen, entire crews, and now it's talking back through your boy's journal. You're poking at something that don't want to be poked." The Harpers, Quinn and Ballard, huddled in the cramped living room, the journal a live wire at the center of their circle, its glow faint but undeniable. Mark, his guilt a festering wound that had consumed him for 14 years, insisted on returning to Ironbound immediately, his voice rising, cracking with desperation. "He's there, Ellen. He's calling us. I left him once, I won't do it again." His hands clenched, his eyes wild, tears brimming, as he stared at the journal, seeing his son in every stroke of ink. Ellen, her face pale, her hands trembling, argued for caution, her voice raw with fear, her words tumbling out in a rush. "What if it's not him? What if it's something else? Something that wants us too? We don't know what's out there, Mark." Her eyes darted to Lily, pleading, terrified of losing another child to the sea's grasp. Lily, silent, felt the hum in her chest, a tether pulling her back to the island. To Ethan, its pull stronger than her fear, stronger than her parents' voice. She'd started dreaming of the cave's pool, its warm, glowing water, Ethan's face flickering in its depths, his green eyes wide with fear or awe, his mouth forming words she couldn't hear. In her dreams, shadows moved behind him, their edges sharp, angular, their presence heavy, watchful, not human. She didn't tell her parents, afraid they'd lock her away, stop her from going, but confided in Quinn, who scribbled notes furiously, her hands shaking as she muttered about non-human intelligence and anomalous phenomena. The hum, Quinn said, was a frequency, a communication, and the journal was its conduit, a bridge between worlds, between the living and something else entirely. They reassembled their team, hiring Jonas Reed to captain the Resolute again. Jonas, his voice rough over the phone, resisted, his reluctance thick with dread. "That place don't want us back," he said, his words clipped, heavy with memory. "I felt it last time, something watching, waiting, knowing our names. It ain't." But the Harpers' desperation, and a substantial payment, swayed him, though his silence on the call was a warning in itself, a pause that spoke of fear he wouldn't voice. They expanded the team, determined to face whatever Ironbound held. Quinn brought her nervous grad student with a knack for electronics, his eyes wide behind thick glasses, his hands fidgeting with cables. Two ex-Navy divers, Carla and Diego, who'd seen enough strange things underwater to take the job seriously, their faces set with grim determination, their silence heavy with unspoken stories. And Dr. Evelyn Choi, a linguist specializing in ancient scripts, fascinated by Ethan's symbols, her dark eyes intense with a curiosity that bordered on obsession. Choi had found similar markings in pre-Sumerian artifacts, always tied to water, to thresholds in ancient myths, places where the world thinned, and something else seeped through. "They're not decorative," she told Lily, her voice barely above a whisper, her fingers tracing the symbol in the journal. "They're instructions or warnings, meant for something or someone not human." They set sail in late November, the Gulf of Maine a churning expanse of slate-gray water, under a sky bruised with heavy clouds, the horizon a smear of gray and black. Ironbound loomed, its cliffs sharper, more menacing, as if the island were baring its teeth, daring them to approach, its presence a weight that pressed against their lungs. The Resolute anchored in the cove where Ethan had vanished, where the Serendipity had battled the storm 14 years ago, the memory of that night a ghost that clung to the Harper. The air was frigid, carrying a metallic tang that stung Lily's throat, settling like dread in her chest, a taste she couldn't shake. They set up camp on the beach, their tents dwarfed by towering cliffs, their shadows stretching like claws across the sand, moving as if alive. Quinn's sensors hummed to life, immediately picking up anomalies, electromagnetic spikes, low-frequency vibrations, faint radiation traces that made Samir's Geiger counter click like a nervous pulse, its rhythm erratic, unsettling. "This isn't natural," Quinn said, her eyes glued to her laptop, her voice tight with a mix of excitement and fear. "It's engineered, alive, like a machine with a mind, a purpose." Choi, poring over Ethan's journal, traced the symbol from the metal box they'd found on their last trip, her fingers trembling. "It's a map," she said, her voice barely audible, her eyes distant, not to a place, but a state, a doorway to somewhere else, something else. The first day was spent scouring the island, their boots crunching on kelp-strewn rocks, the wind howling like a banshee, carrying whispers that seemed to form words just beyond understanding, a language that teased the edges of their mind. They found traces of Ethan, a rusted pocketknife half buried in the sand, its handle engraved with his initials, the blade dulled but sharp with memory, a faded scrap of his yellow raincoat, caught in a crevice like a flag of surrender, its edges frayed by time and tide, fluttering like a wounded bird. Each discovery was a wound, proof he'd been here, alive, after the night they thought he'd drowned. Each find a stab of hope and pain. Mark's face crumpled at the sight of the knife, his fingers tracing the initials, as if he could touch his son through them, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I should have checked his life vest. I should have kept him below deck." Tears streamed down his face, his shoulders shaking, his guilt a chain he'd worn for 14 years. Ellen clutched Lily's hand, her grip trembling, her eyes scanning the cliffs, as if Ethan might step out from the shadows, his lopsided grin intact, his voice calling her name. Lily felt the hum, a pulse matching her heartbeat, pulling her toward the cave, its call stronger here, undeniable, a voice that whispered her name in the wind. They reached the cave by midday, its entrance hidden by bracken, its air damp and heavy with salt, thick with the scent of something ancient, unnameable, a presence that pressed against their skin. The pool was there, its surface still, glowing faintly, reflecting their flashlight beams like a mirror that held secrets, its edges shimmering with an unnatural light. Quinn's instruments went wild, screens glitching, needles pegging, the hum so loud it vibrated their teeth, their bones, their souls. Carla and Diego suited up, their diving gear sleek and black, their faces set with a resolve that couldn't hide their fear, preparing to explore the pool's depths. Jonas stayed on the Resolute, his eyes locked on the sonar, which showed fleeting shapes too large for fish, too fast for wrecks, darting in patterns that defied physics, their movements deliberate, almost predatory. Lily stood at the pool's edge, the journal open in her hands, reading Ethan's words aloud, her voice trembling. "The gate, it's where they go." The water rippled at her voice, the hum surging, a whisper in her head. Ellen yanked her back, her face pale with terror, her voice a hiss. "Stay away from it, Lily, please." But Lily couldn't. She felt Ethan in the water, the air, the stone, his presence a thread she couldn't sever, a wound that bled anew with every beat of her heart. The divers descended, their lights swallowed by the pool's inky depths, the water closing over them like a mouth. The team waited, the silence oppressive, broken only by the hum and the distant crash of waves against the cliffs, each sound a reminder of the sea's hunger. Minutes stretched into an hour, then two, each second a weight on their chests, a tightening noose. Quinn's radio crackled with static, her face tight with worry, her fingers tapping nervously on her laptop, her eyes darting to the pool. Finally, Carla surfaced, gasping, her mask fogged, her eyes wide with something beyond fear, something that looked like awe twisted with terror. "It's not a pool," she said, her voice shaking, water streaming down her face, her hands trembling as she clung to the cave's edge. "It's a tunnel, goes down forever, opens into a chamber, huge with structures like buildings, but wrong, not human, not natural." Diego followed, coughing, his face ashen, his hands shaking as he pulled off his mask. "There's light down there," he said, his voice barely audible, his eyes haunted. "Not from us. It moves, pulses, like it's alive, and symbols on the walls, the floor everywhere, carved like they were waiting for us, watching." They'd tried to take photos, but their camera's memory card was fried, showing only static, as if the chamber refused to be captured, its secrets guarded by something older than time. Quinn, her frustration palpable, demanded they dive again, her voice sharp, but Carla shook her head, her voice firm despite her trembling. It knew we were there, she said. It felt personal, like it was looking into us, seeing our thought. Night fell, the camp, a knot of tension, the hum growing louder, more insistent, vibrating in their chests, like a second heartbeat, a call that wouldn't let them rest. Lily couldn't sleep, the journal heavy in her hands, its pages warm, almost alive, its glow a faint pulse in the dark. She slipped out, drawn to the cave despite her parents' warnings, the hum a beacon guiding her through the night, her footsteps silent on the sand. Inside, the pool glowed brighter, its light casting shadows that moved like figures, their edges sharp, angular, unnatural, their forms shifting as if alive. She opened the journal, and the pages turned on their own, stopping at a new entry, the ink wet, glistening, Ethan's handwriting a wound. Lily, I see you, stay away, they're not what you think. Her heart pounded, her breath shallow, tears stinging her eyes. Ethan, where are you? She whispered, her voice breaking, her hands trembling as she clutched the journal. The water answered, a voice not his but so close it broke her heart, echoing in her mind. The air thickened, the hum a chorus, voices overlapping, inhuman, their words a jumble of sounds that felt like thoughts, pressing against her skull. Stay. She stumbled back, her scream piercing the cave's silence, echoing off the walls as she ran to the camp, her heart pounding, her breath ragged. Mark was furious, his face red, his voice booming through the night. You could have been taken. Do you want to disappear like him? His anger was a mask for his fear, his guilt, his love, tears streaming down his face. As he grabbed her shoulders, Ellen, trembling, held her tight, whispering through sobs, we can't lose you, Lily. Please don't go back there. Her embrace was desperate, her body shaking, her fear a tangible weight. Quinn, electrified, rushed to the cave, rigging sensors around the pool, their readings chaotic, electromagnetic spikes, temperature fluctuations, vibrations that matched no known geological pattern, a symphony of the impossible. Choi, studying the new entry, paled, her hands shaking, as she pointed to the symbol in Ethan's sketches, her voice barely audible. This is old, she said, her eyes darting to the pool, wide with fear. Pre-Sumerian, older than writing, tied to water, to entity. They're called guardians, keepers, but they're not gods, not spirits. They watch, they take. Her voice broke, her hands clutching the journal, as if it could anchor her. Ethan saw them, he went to the team argued into the night, their voices sharp, frayed by fear and desperation, the hum a constant undercurrent, a reminder of the island's presence. Mark, his eyes wild, wanted to dive into the pool, convinced Ethan was in the chamber. Carla described, trapped but alive, his voice cracking with every word. He's my son, he said, tears streaming down his face, his hands clenched into fists. I left him once, I won't do it again. Ellen, her voice raw, begged to leave, her hands clutching Lily's, her fear for her daughter outweighing her hope for Ethan, her words tumbling out in a rush. We don't know what's down there, Mark. What if it takes her too? What if it takes all of us? Her eyes were wide, her face pale, her body trembling with the weight of 14 years of grief. Lily, caught between them, felt the hum pulling her back to the pool, Ethan's presence a thread she couldn't cut, a wound that wouldn't heal, her heart aching with the need to know, to find him, to bring him home. Jonas radioed from the Resolute, his voice tight, cutting through their argument like a blade. Sonar's going nuts. Something big, moving fast, circling us. His words were a cold shock, silencing the camp, their eyes turning to the sea. They rushed to the shore, the sea black under a starless sky, the wind carrying a low moan that wasn't just the waves, a sound that seemed to form words, a language they couldn't grasp. The light was back, the pulsing glow from their last trip, but closer, weaving through the water like a predator, stalking its prey, its movements deliberate, almost intelligent. Jonas's voice crackled over the radio, strained, almost panicked. It's not a sub, not a wave. It's wrong, too fast, too big, too aware. The sonar showed a mass, angular, immense, darting beneath the surface in patterns that defied physics, its movements a dance of purpose. Then the light flared, blinding, a white-hot pulse that seared their eyes, burning their retinas, and the radio went silent, replaced by a low, resonant hum that shook the ground beneath their feet, a vibration that felt like the island itself was waking. Diego rowed out to the Resolute, his face grim when he returned, his voice hollow, his hands trembling. "Jonas is gone," he said, his eyes haunted, his words heavy with finality. The helm's empty, like he was never there. His logbook's open. Last entry just says, "It saw me." The words hung in the air. A new wound, Jonas's absence, a ghost that clung to them, another life, claimed by Ironbound's hunger. The hum roared, shaking the ground, the cliffs, the very air, a sound that felt like a scream from the earth itself. Quinn's sensors fried, their screens black, wires melted into useless coils, their technology no match for whatever guarded the island. Samir's laptop flickered, showing garbled code, symbols like those in the cave, as if the island were rewriting their reality, mocking their attempts to understand. Choi clutched the journal, muttering about thresholds and keepers, her eyes wide, her hands trembling, as she sketched the symbols obsessively, her voice a whisper. "We're not alone, we never were." Lily, numb, felt the hum in her chest, pulling her back to the cave, a call she couldn't ignore, a need that drowned out her fear. She slipped away again, the journal glowing faintly, its weight anchoring her as she moved through the dark, the wind whispering her name, the sea moaning like a living thing. At the pool she knelt, her reflection distorted, Ethan's face flickering beside hers, his green eyes wide, pleading, his mouth forming words she couldn't hear. "I'm here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking, her heart a raw wound. The water surged, and she saw it, the shape, from Ethan's sketch, rising from the depths, its edges sharp, glinting like polished obsidian, its form, neither machine nor creature but something between, its presence, ancient, aware, heavy with intent. The hum became words, a chorus, in her mind, voices overlapping, cold and vast, their sound a pressure that made her head ache. "Stay." The journal slipped from her hands, falling into the pool, sinking, then resurfacing, open to a new page, the ink wet, glistening. "You shouldn't have come, they know you now." The voices grew louder, a cacophony pressing against her skull, a warning and an invitation. "Leave or stay forever," she screamed, the sound raw, primal, echoing as she stumbled back, running to the camp, her heart pounding, her breath ragged, her hands wet from the pool, her mind reeling. Mark and Ellen found her, shaking, incoherent, her eyes wild with terror and grief, her voice a sob. "He's there, I saw him." Mark grabbed her shoulders, his face pale, his voice desperate. "What did you see? Tell me." Ellen held her, sobbing, her embrace a desperate attempt to anchor her daughter, to keep her from the pull of the island. Quinn, frantic, tried to salvage her equipment, but it was useless. Screens cracked, wires fused, their technology reduced to ash. Carla and Diego packed the dinghy, their faces pale, their movements frantic, their eyes darting to the sea, where the light still lingered, circling, searching. Choi stayed by the cave, sketching symbols, whispering, "We're not alone." "We never were," her voice a mantra, her hands trembling as she traced the lines, as if they could protect her from what she'd seen. The ground trembled, the hum a deafening pulse, a sound that felt like the heartbeat of something vast, something away. The light returned, brighter, circling the shore, its movements deliberate, predatory, its glow illuminating shapes beneath the water, angular, immense, moving in patterns that hurt to look at, their edges glinting like blades, their forms defying reason. Lily froze, hearing Ethan's voice in her head, clear and sharp. "Don't follow." Mark grabbed her, dragging her to the dinghy, his voice a raw plea. "We're leaving now." Ellen, sobbing, clung to her, their tears mixing as they rowed to the Resolute. Carla took the helm, the engine roaring as they fled, the light following, its glow seeping into the water, illuminating shapes that moved with purpose, with awareness. The Resolute reached open water, the light fading, but the hum lingered, a reminder of what they'd left behind, a presence that followed them across the sea. They reached the mainland at dawn, the sea calm, but oppressive, as if it carried the island's secrets in its depths. a weight that pressed against their lungs. Jonas's disappearance was a fresh wound, his absence, a ghost that clung to them, another life, claimed by Ironbound's hunger. Back in Connecticut, the Harpers were shattered, their hope for Ethan twisted into something darker, a truth they couldn't grasp, a wound that wouldn't heal. The journal, now blank except for Ethan's old entries, sat cold on Lily's desk, its glow gone, its pages heavy with silence, a relic of a brother lost to something beyond their world. Quinn returned to Woods Hole, her data lost, her career teetering, but she couldn't stop, writing papers that were mocked, yet quietly, shared among those who'd seen the unexplainable, her obsession a fire that burned through her. Choi vanished. Days later, her apartment empty, her notes gone, leaving only a single sketch of the symbol, its lines sharp, mocking, a reminder of the island's reach. Ballard called, his voice heavy with warning, his words a plea. Stop. Some doors don't open both ways, you've seen enough. But the Harpers couldn't let go. Ethan was out there, or had been, and the island held the key, its secrets a wound that bled anew with every thought of him. Lily moved to Maine, renting a cottage by the sea, the journal, her constant companion, its pages a map to a brother she'd lost, but couldn't release. She sketched obsessively, the symbol, the pool, Ethan's face, his green eyes, his lopsided grin, filling canvases with her grief, her hope, her fear, each stroke, a cry into the void, a plea for answer. Ellen and Mark drifted apart, their marriage buckling under the weight of loss, their love buried beneath years of guilt and pain. Ellen buried herself in work, avoiding the ocean, her dreams haunted by the pool's glow, by Ethan's face, by the shadows that moved behind him. Mark pored over charts, searching for patterns in the Gulf's currents, as if they could lead him to Ethan, his guilt a chain he couldn't break, his hope a fire that refused to die. Lily walked the shore daily, her eyes scanning the horizon, half expecting to see Ethan's silhouette against the waves, his voice calling her name, his presence, a ghost that lingered in the wind. The hum woke her at night, faint but persistent, a whisper in the dark that grew louder with each passing day. She began to hear it in the wind, in the crash of waves, in the creak of her cottage's walls, as if the island had followed her, its presence, a shadow she couldn't escape. She dreamed of the cave, the pool, Ethan standing at its edge, his back to her, shadows moving behind him, their forms sharp, their eyes glinting like the light in the water, their presence heavy, watchful. In her dreams he turned, his face pale, his eyes hollow, and said, "You shouldn't have come." She woke gasping, the journal warm on her nightstand, its pages untouched but heavy with presence, its silence. She began to notice changes in her cottage, small things at first, a glass moved, a door ajar, the journal opened to a page she hadn't touched. The hum grew stronger, a pulse that followed her, a voice that whispered her name in the quiet moment. She found herself sketching the symbol without thinking, her hands moving, as if guided, the lines sharp, precise, a language she didn't understand but couldn't resist. She stopped sleeping, her nights spent staring at the sea, the journal open beside her, its pages blank but heavy, as if waiting for Ethan's words to return. She felt him, closer now, in the wind, in the waves, in the hum that pulsed through her veins, a presence that was both her brother and something else, something vast, something that knew her name. One evening, as the sun bled crimson into the sea, casting a glow that reminded her of the pool, she walked the shore, the wind cold, the waves whispering her name, their rhythm, a song she couldn't unhear. She found a bottle, its glass clouded, half buried in the sand, its surface etched with faint scratches, as if it had been clawed by something desperate to escape. Her heart stopped as she pried it open, her fingers trembling, the hum rising in her chest, a roar that drowned out the sea. Inside was a paper, folded tightly, Ethan's handwriting unmistakable, its ink fresh, impossible. "I'm sorry, I had to know, don't follow." With it was a pebble, small, smooth, etched with the symbol, its lines sharp, precise, as if carved by something not human, its weight heavy in her palm, a stone that carried the island's secret. The hum surged, the sea roaring, the air thick with a presence she couldn't name, a pressure that made her head ache, her heart pound. She knelt, tears streaming down her face, the bottle heavy in her hands, the pebble a weight that anchored her to the earth. Ethan had crossed a threshold, into a city of light, a place guarded by keepers, entities older than time, claimed by their watchful gaze, their presence, a shadow that stretched across the year. She stood, the wind tearing at her hair, the sea whispering secrets she'd never unravel, its voice, a chorus of voices, none human, all knowing. The journal, the island, the symbols, they were pieces of a truth too vast, too ancient, for her to grasp. A puzzle with no edges, no center, no. She buried the bottle, the pebble, and the journal in her garden, under a tree Ethan had loved as a boy, its branches bare against the winter sky, their shadows stretching like fingers across the earth, reaching for. The hum stopped, but the ache didn't. A void where Ethan's laughter used to be, a wound that bled with every breath. She never returned to Ironbound, but she felt it, always in the rhythm of the waves, the weight of the air, the silence that followed her, a presence that whispered her name in the dark. Standing by the sea, her sketches scattered in the wind, she whispered, "I love you," her voice breaking, her heart raw, hoping against all reason that Ethan, wherever he was, could feel it, could know she'd never stop searching, even if she could never follow.